Welcome to Karma Chronicles. Please like the video and subscribe. Let's begin. I was halfway through my second ginger tonic, already regretting the heels when I saw him. Major General Harlan L. Huxley, retired, decorated, untouchable. My father. He wasn't supposed to be there. Not on the guest list. Not in that tux. But there he stood, polished and proud, striding through the gala ballroom at the Conrad Hotel in Midtown like he owned the air. I froze. He hadn't spoken to me in 8 months. I worked 3 floors under the radar, buried in systems at a defense subcontractor front. Most people thought I handled IT, fine by me. But this event, this was for appearances. The tech giant throwing it, Arcturian Industries, had slapped supporting military families all over the banners to make their new satellite mesh tech launch look noble. My face was on the panel brochure. Systems operator, defense integration lead. He spotted me. He walked right up, hand out to some Navy admiral and said, "This is my daughter. She's just a systems operator." I swear to God, just. Then he clapped the guy's shoulder, turned, and kept walking. Like I was a name tag he'd worn for too long. Quick note, before we go deeper, share which city or country you're watching from. I stayed planted for another full minute. Didn't breathe right. The guy I spent 2 decades trying to impress had just downsized my entire life's work in front of 4 senators and a weapons lobbyist from Lockheed. I scanned the room to ground myself. Waiters with polished trays, executives in midnight blue suits, too many laughing at nothing. Then my eyes caught something at the head table. A server leaned down to the left of Chang Jiu, the Chinese billionaire behind most of Arcturian's funding. A hand moved behind the server's back. There was a glass, pale amber liquid, sweating. Then a second hand. Different angle, swap. It was fast, practiced, too smooth for nerves. I started walking, not toward him, toward the nearest side path that looped behind the head table. I didn't know what the hell I was going to say, but I had to get close. Ziyu raised the glass. "Boo, Yao Hei," I said. "Don't drink." My voice was low but firm. His eyes flicked toward me, one flicker, a flash of something like curiosity, then understanding. He gave the smallest nod. Then he drank anyway. 5 seconds, he jolted, hands spasming, body jerking forward. Someone screamed. Silverware clattered. Half the table stood. Security rushed. I stood still, frozen again. But not from shock this time. Across the room, through the shifting crowd, I saw him, my father. Our eyes locked for 1/2 second. Just one. And he smirked. It wasn't panic. It wasn't surprise. It was satisfaction. I moved. I pushed through the crowd, heart pounding, eyes locked on the paramedics surrounding Ziyu's crumpled body. Security was sealing off exits, guests were panicking, and all I could think about was that damn smirk. I slipped out the side entrance. My badge would buy me time later. Right now, I needed air and space to think. He had smiled. That flicker on his face was not confusion. It was satisfaction. Like he'd just watched a problem solve itself. And that moment, that split second, it cracked something open in me that had been splintering for years. See, what he never knew, what he never wanted to know, was what I really did. I spent 20 years in cyber intelligence, not keyboard warrior stuff, real work. Embedded operations, digital infiltration. Breaking open encrypted networks built to withstand war. My focus was Eastern dialect-based code structures. Mandarin, Cantonese, Hokkien, you name it. Language and logic twisted into ciphers so dense, most AI models choked on them. I didn't sit in some cubicle answering help desk calls. I stood in sealed control rooms, underground bunkers, inside rotating black sites. I watched entire black market weapons exchanges dissolve into dust because I caught a phrase no one else did. No medals, no press conferences, no face in the paper. Just redacted reports and quiet approvals. That's the job. I once caught a string of code posing as trade tariff jargon. Beneath it was a blueprint for a power grid takedown in Tokyo. Intercepted it 46 minutes before the launch. Saved lives. And what did he say when I told him? Not much. We were standing in his kitchen in Arlington. I remember the light hitting the scar on his jaw. That one from '93 Bosnia. He poured his coffee, nodded once, and said, "So, you figured out some emails?" Emails. That was the language gap between us. He wanted wars you could see. Bodies, broken terrain, boots on the ground. Not surgical code. Not precision with no bang. He didn't respect anything he couldn't hold or throw. At my 10-year promotion, I was the only one in the room without family. Everyone else had someone pinning their badge. Mine sat on the counter in a plain box until I brought it home. I remember another time, 5 years ago, live op out of Seoul. We were running decryption in real time while their network was being hit from 3 directions. Whole city could have gone dark. I stayed awake for 31 hours straight running phrase-matching algorithms by hand, burned my eyes out. When it was over, I told him about it on a call. Just tried to share. He said, "That's great, Lena. You get any sleep lately?" That's it. That was his version of pride. I stopped calling after that, so when he brushed me off at the gala, called me just a systems operator, it wasn't some new humiliation. It was just the first one with a spotlight. And still, I wanted him to see me. Not love me. Not even forgive. Just see. I used to tell myself he didn't understand my world, that maybe if he could, he'd respect it. But he could have asked. Just once. Instead, every time I made rank, every time I cracked a code that kept an embassy standing or a trade war from boiling over, I'd get a message from my mom saying, "Your dad says congrats," through her. Always. No call. No direct words. No questions. He never saw me work. He never asked what I'd given up. Relationships, holidays, my damn spine from all the hours hunched over servers. He didn't see the cost. And now, after all of it, that face at the gala made it worse. Because if that smirk meant what I think it did, if he was involved in whatever brought that drink to Zoo's lips, then everything I ever did to protect this country, all the silence, all the sacrifice, might have been protecting him too. And that thought, it made my hands shake for the first time in years. That shake in my hands didn't go away. Not that night, not the next day. I sat in my apartment, back pressed into the cold steel of my server rack, playing the gala moment over and over again in my head. But I didn't have real proof, just instinct, suspicion. Then I remembered the audio file. It had come in about a week before the gala, end-to-end encrypted, flagged priority, sender ID buried in old Singapore Intel protocols. I almost ignored it, thought it was misrouted, but the subject line stuck with me. Routing Echo, L5 clearance eyes only. The sender was Ferris, an old colleague from my 3rd year at the agency. Sharp, quiet, only messaged when it mattered. I decrypted it, popped headphones on, and listened. 37 seconds of chopped Mandarin. No names, no direct coordinates. But the phrasing was odd. Too clean for natural conversation, too rigid for standard code. 第三节点通过输光协议转移. Third node routed through the Dawn protocol. I ran it through a cross-reference index we used for shell firms and gray market logistics fronts. Got a hit. Orion Aperture LLC. Sounded like a telescope startup. Wasn't. They were routing experimental communications gear, classified grade stuff, into diplomatic shipments, dodging customs under ambassadorial tech exchanges. Still didn't raise full alarms. Corporate back channels happen more often than the public wants to know. But then I pulled the advisor logs. Internal documents from a recent clearance breach in our contractor database listed strategic consultants on Orion's board. Most were generic suits, 2 flagged under older government affiliations. One of them, Harlan L. Huxley. I stared at the name like it might blink off the screen. Strategic advisor, there it was. And suddenly, this one random Thanksgiving came rushing back, 3 years ago. He was sipping whiskey neat and watching football while I reheated the stuffing. He said, "I've been mentoring some tech punks out west. Got ambition, but no structure. Figured I'd knock him into shape." I thought it was another retired military pats himself on the backstory, but that was the same quarter Orion Aperture registered in Nevada. I started pulling records. His travel schedule was too clean, no gaps. Every trip aligned almost perfectly with known cyber interference events: Taipei, Frankfurt, Cape Town. Each location experienced digital anomalies within 48 hours of his arrival. The Frankfurt breach hit a secure EU Intel link that took weeks to clean up. He'd flown out the day after. He wasn't hiding the trips, but he wasn't volunteering anything either. I tracked the routing documents tied to Orion's shipments. The destinations weren't on any diplomatic manifest, not openly. They were flagged as classified support infrastructure, a phrase I'd only seen once, during a known front operation tied to election interference in Jakarta. I dug deeper. Payment ledgers, consulting fees. No outrageous sums. Just clean transfers every quarter, labeled Strategic Security Insight. Enough to look legit, but now it all clicked. My dad wasn't just someone they used for photo ops or press weight. He was part of the structure, a node, maybe even the bait. And I couldn't tell anyone, not yet, not officially. But I flagged the file internally, buried it in a locked folder under a non-obvious tag, Red Sky Reflections. If anything happened to me, I needed someone to know where to look, because this wasn't about one poisoned glass. This was a network. And somehow, my father was sitting right in the middle of it. I needed eyes on him, face to face. No cameras, no reports, just me and whatever I could pick up with my own senses. So I texted, found an old photo of Mom from '89, thought you'd want it back. He replied 2 minutes later, swing by any time, I'll be home. The house was in Reston, Northern Virginia. Quiet street, same stone exterior, same flag out front. But as soon as I stepped inside, something felt off. He hugged me like nothing had ever gone cold between us. Light slap on the shoulder, half smile. You look strong, he said. You look busy, I replied. The walls had changed. His old medals were still there, but rearranged. New maps pinned under glass. No family photos, not even Mom's. I'll go grab the frame, I said, heading toward the den. I had no intention of giving it to him yet. Coffee? He called from the kitchen. Yeah, sure. I took the long way through the hallway. Everything smelled too clean, like chemicals, not life. The basement door was cracked. I peeked. New hardware, fresh cables. A pair of humming mid-tower servers sat next to his old gun safe. Cooling fans on full blast. One monitor was running code. Nothing normal civilians need. Back in the kitchen, a book lay open on the counter. Dog-eared, worn spine. Conversational Mandarin, Practical Phrases for Strategic Environments. He used to joke that anything not in English or Latin was noise, called Mandarin too polite to win wars. So why now? Why this? I kept my tone casual. Studying something new? I nodded at the book. He looked over, then shrugged. Gotta keep the mind sharp. Some of those punks I mentor like to show off. Figured I'd keep up. But his jaw was tight, a little twitch in the corner. He hated being questioned. You said they were just software kids, I said. He grinned. They've grown up. I let it sit. Didn't press. Let the silence work for me. He poured the coffee and set mine down. You still doing the agency dance? Something like that. He nodded. No follow-up. Didn't care. I pretended to scroll my phone and wandered toward the back of the house. I needed more. A hook. Something solid. That's when I heard it. His voice, low and stiff, behind his office door. Tayeksu iwe wo shi tamenderen. He might think I'm one of them. He fumbled the tones. Badly. Then silence. Then, in English. Number. No, I said it like you wrote it. He won't question it. I backed up fast and stepped into the hallway like I'd been looking for the bathroom. He came out a second later, wiping his phone screen on his sleeve. Calm. I smiled like I hadn't heard a damn thing. We sat, talked about nothing, baseball, gas prices, junk like that. But my mind was running every angle. He wasn't fluent, he was learning, mimicking, memorizing. Someone was feeding him scripts, coaching him through just enough to get by. This wasn't spycraft. This was conversion. Slowly, carefully. He didn't sound like a man relaying orders. He sounded like one trying to belong. It wasn't betrayal for profit, it was belief. And that scared the hell out of me more than anything else. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of what he said, but how he said it. That phrase, he might think I'm one of them, stuck in my gut like a splinter. He wasn't playing double agent, he was chasing alignment, approval, purpose, and I knew exactly where to look next. There's a backdoor to a restricted joint cyber task force brief, buried in a walled section of the Langley server stack. I'd been cleared for limited access years ago. But this wasn't something I could pull through official queries. I had to break protocol. Quietly. I bounced through 2 proxy tunnels and let the credential spoofing run while I cracked open the brief labeled Ardent Halo. It was bigger than I expected. This wasn't one-off espionage. This was patterned influence. Global, sustained. They were embedding operatives inside commercial advisory boards, targeting trusted veterans, retired generals, former intel officers, decorated names with high-level clearance histories, but no current oversight. Men like my father. The brief laid out dozens of influence operations masked as corporate strategy. One case showed a defense software product accidentally delayed in Israel to nudge negotiations. Another traced a fake data leak out of Seoul to a shell firm that never existed on paper before the breach. And the worst, false intel about a biological threat seeded through encrypted emails and handed off to two G7 advisors. No virus, just panic. Every op had the same thing in common. A so-called strategic advisor who helped it slide past scrutiny. Retired, reputable, invisible once they were gone. I kept scrolling. Then a face stopped me. Freeze frame. Low-res surveillance, still from a security cam in Macau. A man sitting at a cafe table, shaking hands with two known destabilizers flagged in European watch lists. The man? Ray Cawthron, Chief Operating Officer of Huxley Global Strategic, my father's firm. He was wearing a gray windbreaker and smiling like he was closing a deal on golf clubs. I pulled Ray's file. Army background, logistics. Retired in 2012, clean record. Then disappeared into the advisory circuit. His travel history? Dead match for multiple flagged events across 5 countries in 3 years. What the hell were they building? It wasn't money. These weren't buyouts or bribes. The bank records were boring. Normal salaries, no sudden spikes. This was legacy bait. These men weren't being paid to betray. They were being told they were protecting something, that the real threats were internal, that their country was soft, and only they had the guts to secure the future. It was a con tailored for men who couldn't let go of their relevance. And my father? He fit the profile like a damn blueprint. The age, the record, the ego, that haunted itch to feel useful again. He wasn't selling out the country for cash. He was being fed a new mission, one that told him he could keep protecting us by going around us. That poison drink? Just the symptom. The disease ran through boardrooms, ops centers, former generals and CEOs tricked into thinking they were still in the fight. I sat back, staring at the freeze frame of Ray Cawthron's handshake. I knew that hand. I'd seen it pour whiskey in my dad's study. I'd seen it hold Mom's shoulder at her funeral. Now it was building something rotten. And my father, he wasn't just a pawn. He was a recruiter, maybe even a believer. I saved everything. Screenshots, metadata, trip overlays. Bundled it under a secondary archive buried under a mock HR audit file. If I got hit for digging too deep, I needed someone to find it. I didn't care about losing my clearance. I cared about stopping this machine before it got bigger. And I was officially out of time for second guesses. I didn't go home after Macau, didn't shower, didn't breathe right. I grabbed my go bag and headed straight to the ops center in Alexandria. Level 4 subfloor, no windows, no questions. I had 20 minutes tops before anyone upstream noticed I was digging without a leash. Badge swipe, palm scan, silent hallway. Inside, I locked the door behind me and dropped the briefcase on the steel desk. Pulled out the one thing that mattered, my jacket from the gala, specifically the button, top left. Micro HD lens embedded just behind the thread. Always rolling. I'd rigged it for asset meetings, but that night, I wore it because something in my gut told me to. I jacked into the server and offloaded the feed. The playback hit like a gut punch. The glass swap, clean, practiced, surgical. The twitch of hesitation on Zhu's face, the way he lifted the drink anyway, and then his collapse. Then came the part I was waiting for. I zoomed in, center frame, across the room. My father, watching, not reacting, not alert, just absorbing. And then, there it was, the smirk, the flicker, barely a heartbeat long. I isolated it, framed it, time-stamped it. Next step, audio extraction. The room had erupted after the collapse, but I'd set my cam to catch wide-angle ambient sound. I dumped the track into voice-matching AI and scrubbed it for anomalies. I hit pay dirt at the 12-second mark after the ambassador hit the floor. Buried in the shouting, a voice, sharp, male, calm under pressure. It had to happen. He refused. I ran it against internal databases. Took about 90 seconds. Match, Ray Cawthron, my father's COO. I stopped, sat back in the chair. My hands were steady now, not from calm, just clarity. This wasn't an accident, not a warning. It was an execution. Zhu had refused something. Partnership, compliance, maybe just silence. And they took him out right there at the head table, dressed it up in chaos, and let the mess wash over everyone else. I filed the incident report under a restricted tag, lena.h.huxley_incident_G1147. and uploaded the footage to a dead-drop secure server with mirrored backups. Then I encrypted the AI-verified audio and attached a full metadata chain showing Catherine's voice print match. No wiggle room. But I didn't submit it up the chain. Not yet. This wasn't just about evidence anymore. I had to get ahead of whatever the next move was. Because men like Catherine don't kill out of impulse. They kill to clear space, to shift strategy. Jiu was a roadblock, and roadblocks only matter if there's still a car in motion, which meant something bigger was coming. I opened a blank folder, named it Operation Throttle Point. I started dragging everything I had into it. Financial trails, voice logs, freeze frames, decrypted leads, travel overlaps, every thread, every connection. I knew what the stakes were now. This wasn't theory or politics. This was about power moving in the dark, cloaked in patriotism, dressed in legacy. And if I waited for the system to process it through its slow, careful channels, people were going to die. Again. So I did what I was trained to do. I went hunting. My eyes were bloodshot from screen time. I hadn't stood up in hours. The ops center lights were still on, humming above me like a quiet threat. Then my phone buzzed. Block number, no caller ID, but I knew. I stared at it for one ring, then two. I picked up on the third. Lena. Just my name, nothing else, no greeting, no fake warmth. His voice was lower than usual, slower, like he was making sure every word landed right. I didn't answer. After a pause, he asked, "What are you working on?" No anger, no push, just curiosity, wrapped in something heavier. I swallowed. "I'm protecting what you used to believe in." Silence, not stunned, not confused, measured. I heard him breathing, steady, like he was out on the deck watching the wind roll over the trees. And then, nothing. No denial, no threats, not even a change in tone. Just that pause, that long, quiet hang between us. I knew what it meant. He knew I had him. Knew I wasn't guessing anymore, but he wasn't backing off. Wasn't trying to run. He was waiting to see what I'd do next. It wasn't fear, it was calculation. That silence said, "I see you. And I want to know if you're really going to pull the trigger." I didn't blink. I ended the call. No goodbye, no permission. I closed the window, unplugged my drive, and uploaded the final report. Full documentation, time-stamped, secured. Subject read Major General Harlan L. Huxley. Alias tags, financial ties, foreign contacts, facial recognition matches, and the footage. His face in that ballroom, in the moment. I signed it. Then I sat back in my chair, watching the screen go dark. For the first time in 20 years, I wasn't filing something for him, wasn't protecting his reputation, wasn't trying to make him proud. I was holding him accountable. They didn't call it a trial. They called it a classified inquiry. Closed door, no press, no names in the logs. But everyone knew what it was. The room was buried 6 levels below Arlington. Concrete walls, no cell signals, clock removed. Tinted observation glass on one side. 2 flags, one American, one black with no insignia, stood behind the panel of 5. I sat behind the glass first, folder on my lap, 10 tabs inside, financials, transcripts, geolocation overlays, AI-matched voice logs. I didn't bring emotion. I brought data. 2 rows ahead of me, he sat straight-backed in a gray suit. My father. He didn't turn around, didn't glance. He stared forward like a soldier waiting for his next orders. Someone from Defense Intel whispered behind me, "That's Harlan Huxley?" Another voice. "Still walks like he runs the place." Then a third. Quiet. Almost too low to catch. She was the one he said would never measure up. I stood. Walked when they called. My boots hit the floor sharp. Intentional. As I passed, I looked right at him. He didn't move. Didn't flinch. Eyes fixed ahead. Like I wasn't even there. I took the seat. Faced the panel. They didn't ask me to swear in. They didn't need to. I opened the folder. "My name is Lena Huxley. Clearance Echo Level 4. I am the reporting agent for File Operation Throttle Point." No one interrupted. I continued. On the night of the Arcturian Gala, a foreign ambassador collapsed after ingesting a poisoned drink. The incident appeared random. It wasn't. I captured the full event on embedded surveillance, including the deliberate swap of the glass. I slid the photo evidence across the table. I kept my voice flat, tight. Seconds after the collapse, the COO of Huxley Global Strategic, Ray Cawthron, was heard stating, quote, "It had to happen. He refused." This statement was voice-matched with a 98% confidence rating to Cawthron, pulled from 3 unrelated recordings. No one blinked. I kept going. The equipment routed through Orion Aperture LLC, ostensibly for diplomatic communications, was misused in at least 3 international interference events. Each link points back to corporate intermediaries advised by the same individuals. I looked directly at the middle panel member. One of those advisors was retired Major General Harlan L. Huxley. A few pens shifted in hands. No one looked surprised. I flipped to the transcript. On redacted date, I recorded Huxley speaking Mandarin during a private phone call. The phrase he used was, "Ta ye shu yi wei wo shi ta Mandarin." He might think I'm one of them. I paused. This isn't casual language. The phrasing mimics a known trigger code identified in multiple influence operations stretching back to the initial tests of Project Cloud Root. The structure, rhythm, and implications suggest active messaging alignment. I let that land. This wasn't espionage. This was ideological conversion. Someone near the end of the table jotted that down. I didn't know which agency they were from. Didn't matter. I laid out the maps, tracked his flights, marked the dates, laid each one next to a disruption, a leak, a political ripple. It was all there, and they knew it. When I finished, they nodded. That was the signal. "You may return to your seat," one said. I stood, turned, walked past him again. He still didn't look at me, but when I sat down, I felt it. His eyes, finally on me, not angry, not proud, just quiet. Like a cornered man realizing the walls weren't where he thought they were. The silence between us wasn't personal anymore. It was the echo of a truth too heavy to deny. A month passed. No knock at the door, no calls, no statements released to the public. Everything stayed sealed and silent, just like they wanted. Then the envelope showed up. Plain white. No stamps, no return address. Just my name across the center. Lena. Written in that blocky, stubborn handwriting of his. All caps, no curves. He didn't send it through any official channel. No one handed it off. It was just there, slipped through the mail slot like it belonged. I stood there with it in my hand for a long time. Didn't open it, didn't shake it or check the seal. I just stared. And I knew there'd be no confession in there. No apology, probably not even an explanation. If I had to guess, it was more like a justification. A puzzle piece he thought I'd missed. Maybe some twisted logic about why legacy mattered more than rules. But I didn't need it. I walked across the room and set it down on the 3rd shelf, right between my Mandarin translation manual and an old paperback on strategic listening. No dramatic pause, no final glance, just left it there. That shelf had always been his zone. Military biographies, war memoirs, titles like Hard Decisions and The Cost of Silence. Books he gave me when I was 16, and angry that I didn't get the lead role in anything he approved of. I used to read them cover to cover, thinking if I could just understand the rules he lived by, maybe he'd meet me halfway. But I stopped needing his language a long time ago. I stood there, looking at the envelope, not as a daughter, not even as an agent, just as someone who had finally stopped reaching backward. I didn't do this to ruin him. I didn't care about headlines. There won't be any anyway. I did it because silence, when it's protecting the wrong thing, is just another weapon. And I wasn't going to carry his anymore. I didn't open the letter. Not that day. Maybe someday I will. Maybe when it's cold outside and I've run out of things to explain to myself. But not now. Now the silence isn't a burden. It's armor. He once taught me how to endure, how to hold a line and not flinch. But I showed him what real strength looks like. Strength isn't marching forward because someone told you to. It's stopping the people who think they can walk through anyone to get what they want, even if those people are the ones who raised you. 2 months later, I was sitting at a quiet round table in Brussels. 12 chairs, 2 embassies, 1 translator already sweating through his collar. The issue on the table was technical, on paper, some glitch in a cross-border encryption protocol traced back to a firmware update. But nobody was really talking about firmware. They were talking about intent, trust, sovereignty, which in diplomatic rooms like that is how wars start. Both sides were locked in, posture straight, arms folded, every sentence edged with threat. One wrong word, and this thing would blow wide open. I stayed silent at first. I wasn't the lead. I wasn't even listed on the roster. Just a background observer. But the longer it dragged on, the more I saw the signs. Delegates talking past each other, interpreters overwhelmed, the tension rising like steam in a sealed room. And then it happened. A junior rep from the eastern side slammed his folder shut. The sound cracked through the air like a gunshot. The American rep pushed back his chair. "If this is how you want to proceed?" I didn't let him finish. I leaned in. Not loud, not forceful, just clear. In Mandarin, I said, "Shiji idao, biandang dito." When the time comes, it's wise to lower your head. It's a proverb about humility, about patience. The room went still. The junior rep froze. His eyes shifted. Then slowly, he sat back down. The senior delegate next to him gave the smallest nod. Almost nothing, but enough. The heat broke. They picked the thread back up, calmer, more careful. The call de-escalated. No headlines, no press waiting outside. Just a problem, diffused. No one gave me credit. That was fine. I didn't need it. As the chairs scraped and the room cleared, I stepped into the hallway alone. Cold concrete, quiet footsteps. I didn't think of him. Not in the old way, not like I used to, not as the voice behind me pushing or judging. He wasn't there, not anymore. I whispered because it works, because silence can be a scalpel when you know where to cut, because I didn't need his words in my mouth to be heard. I had my own.